Hey, what's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC. Today's video, we're going to be replacing the 4 items you see on the table in front of you with some budget alternatives that you can find at Home Depot, or really any hardware store for that matter. I bought them at Home Depot, but they're not exclusive to Home Depot. You can find them anywhere. And so I didn't choose these 4 items in a vacuum. I chose them first off because I knew I'd be able to easily replace them with items I've seen at Home Depot in the past, but also because these are items that most people would not consider to be inexpensive. In fact, if you bought all 4 of these items at their normal retail price, you'd end up spending upwards of $425. And that's a number that I think for someone just getting into EDC is going to find inaccessible. In fact, some people that have been into EDC for years are going to find that inaccessible. And so I don't want to knock these items because I think these are all really great items that I would frankly buy again if I didn't have them in my collection. But in the EDC world and really any hobby, you get this fear of missing out. You see these cool items in Instagram shots or with exotic materials. You see them in YouTube videos. I'm sure I'm guilty of adding fuel to the fire. And you feel like you have to have those to really complete your EDC. But in reality, most of these items have budget alternatives that are going to do the job just as well, if not close to as well. And they may not look as cool, they may not have the exotic materials, but the items that we're replacing these with today cost less than 10% of what you'd spend to get these 4 items. And so pretty big difference. Let's dive into it. I'm just going to work my way left to right. So starting with the Knipex extra small Cobra pliers. These are 4-inch pliers, really popular in the EDC world right now. About $30, so the least expensive item that we're going to see today, really well built and just compact, and so I think that's why they're so popular. Now, this was probably the hardest to find a replacement for because in the plier section at Home Depot, their pliers meant for a toolbox. They don't have a lot of pocket pliers, and so what I was able to find was the Crescent 4.5-inch straight jaw pliers. You can see these have that dipped grip and still have the adjustable jaws there. Now, the price on this one was $9.97, so about a third of the cost of the Knipex. Now, first thing you'll notice seeing them side by side is the Crescent is definitely a little bit rough around the edges, not as polished for sure. And then that adjustable jaw doesn't open quite as wide as the Knipex, but it's pretty close. It's not that significant of a difference, but the Knipex do open a little bit wider, and you'll see that jaw attachment is a lot more robust on the Knipex. This one's a little bit kind of flimsy looking. That's definitely looks like it could be a failure point down the road, but I think they'll hold up for a decent bit of time. But if you look at the Knipex, it looks like these are never going to break. The attachment is super robust and just a lot more polished, but again, you're paying 3 times the price of what you're going to pay for that Crescent pliers. And so these are about 4.5 inches versus 4 inches on the Knipex. And so they're similar width. If you have a slip for the Knipex, they'll probably still fit. They might stick out just a hair higher, but should still fit, but just a little bit larger. Now, also a little bit slimmer, and I think a little bit lighter as well. So kind of trade-offs there in size, but the big difference obviously is going to be that price point. Now, moving on to our permanent marker option, I went with the Soul-Built Marksmith. Really love this. This is a titanium body with a DLC coating and the only bolt action permanent marker that I know of. The bolt on here for that bolt action is actually the pocket clip, which is unique, also super fidgety. You can swap out the colors of that insert. You can swap it for highlighters. Mine has the channel name. There's an adapter kit that allows you to put pen inserts in there. So really, really cool pen, but $100 to $120 depending on the option you choose. And so there really wasn't anything like this at Home Depot, but there were disposable versions, and so that's what we went with. So we're gonna swap that out for the Milwaukee Inkzall. Now I went with this rather than a Sharpie because this one's supposedly a little bit more durable body, a little bit better at writing on rough surfaces, oily surfaces, stuff covered in sawdust. And so this one's really meant for kind of heavier use, and so still not super expensive though, $1.09 for these. And obviously once you're done with this, it's disposable. You're not going to be able to swap out that insert. You're just going to buy a new one, but you can buy about 100 of these before you're reaching the price of the Marksmith. And so really nice kind of budget entry that should do the job just fine and happens to match the color scheme. I didn't intentionally match everything, but 2 of the items are from the same brand, and then everything just happened to match in this carry So the next two items are actually going to be replaced with one item. We'll start with the TPT slide. This one's the Topo version from Best Damn EDC. Really cool little utility knife, super fancy looking, and slides in and out. Really nice operation on that. Has a hex driver that I never really use. I would just carry an actual bit driver, which you see next to it, and then the screw turner / pry tool at the end. This is about $95. Overall, super solid. The only kind of negative point for me is swapping the blades out does feel a little bit sketchy if you don't just disassemble the whole thing, and so that's kind of a pain point for it, but otherwise super solid. Now the other item is the Good Screw Zirconcrete driver, and this one is zirconium with a special formulated coating that they call zirconcrete. It's not actually concrete. You can see that head will spin forever. We can just set that down. Actually, it makes a little bit of noise, so we're gonna stop it, but that will spin for probably 90 seconds to 120 seconds or so. These run about $170. So between the two of these, we're looking at $265. We're replacing them with a single item that runs for $20, and you may have already guessed what that is, the Milwaukee Fastback. Super popular for very obvious reasons. It's an excellent tool. You can see it has a bottle opener on the end, button lock to access that utility knife. You see there's a nail nick here. You can't actually use that. The button is locking it in place. Now once you press the button you can, but way more satisfying to just press it and flick it. That comes flying out of there. It takes standard utility blades, nothing proprietary there. Really easy to swap. There's a button here that you can see it's locked in place, but if you press that button you can pull it out and just flip it around first so that you can use that opposite edge, and then once bolted it'll replace it. It has a strap cutter section right here, so you can use that portion of the blade for cutting rope or line. And overall, just a really cool utility knife that's super easy to get it in and out, super easy to swap the blade, which is really nice, and has a built-in bit driver. Now this bit driver does come with a single bit, but it's a double-sided, but it will fit the standard bits. So you can see that just flips around. You can also just put standard bits in there. Has this half stop position, which isn't actually locked in, so you can close it from there, or you can open it all the way, and that does have a little liner lock that keeps it locked in that fully deployed position. So really, really nice. You do have to carry some other bits if you're going to be using anything but Phillips or flat, but it does come with that number 2 Phillips, and I don't know what number on the flat. And then that liner lock is really easy to get into, stops again in that half position, and you can just push it closed. Lanyard hole, pocket clip. The pocket clip is kind of bulky, and it's going to be tipped down carry, but otherwise, you know, it's fine. Now this is definitely a lot bulkier than our other options, but 2-in-1 and really, really cool tool. So that's everything. Now for those 3 items, we end up spending about $31 again versus about $425 and getting the same function. Now the Crescent pliers here, I do think are going to fail long before our Knipex, but I think that they're going to last long enough that you're not going to care so much. The Milwaukee Inksole, that is going to be disposable versus refillable and just throwing away a bunch of plastic, where this one, the Mark Smith, is going to be a little bit more sustainable in that it's just a titanium body. You're not disposing of that plastic each time, just the inserts. And so there's some trade-offs, but overall I think this loadout is as capable as the other loadout at less than 10% of the cost. Let me know what you think of my choices down in the comments below, and also some suggestions on, you know, next items that I should tackle, whether that's at hardware stores, Amazon, or big box stores. And it can be the same items at different stores or different items at the same store, but would love suggestions to continue this series down in the comments below. But if you enjoyed this video, consider liking, commenting, subscribing, and hitting the notification button. And as always, I hope you have a great one. Take care.